Hello friends! With the Procreate 5.4 update, there are now even more incredible default brushes to choose from, and we're going to explore some of them. In this video, I'm going to try the Swift brush. To find this brush, open the new Procreate brush library, go to the Inks set, then look for Swift. As usual, I haven't made any changes in the brush studio, and I'll be using this brush exactly as it was installed. I also have my canvas set to 4000 by 3000 pixels at 300 dpi. Before we dive in, I'd love if you'd like, comment, subscribe, and watch till the very end because it really helps the channel. First, let's take a look at a few different stroke sizes. At the smallest size, you get the look of a slightly dry brush. Some areas have no pigment at all or a really dry texture. Then that dry texture look becomes more obvious when the brush is at a medium size, and the stroke can get a little uneven in some areas as well. At the largest size, the stroke looks more solid, so you don't see those white areas inside the stroke, but you can still see the dry texture along the edges. Now let's test the pressure sensitivity. All right, so there is some pressure sensitivity, but it's just a slight increase in stroke size with additional pressure. There's no taper to the stroke, and I'm not seeing any value shifting or change in opacity. All right, I'm going to switch my grip and use the side of the pencil tip to see what happens. And really, I see no difference when you use the side of the pencil tip compared to using a regular grip. Now I'll put down a few color swatches so that we can test the opacity. And it quickly became clear that this brush is completely opaque. There's absolutely no transparency at all, and you can't see through the overlapping color swatches. All right, finally, let's see what the smudge tool does. That's interesting. With the smudge tool, that really solid opaque color quickly becomes lighter and more transparent looking. So the smudge tool isn't really blending the colors. Instead, it kind of transforms a look from solid ink to more of a watered down wash. So let's see, if I test it in black, you can see how it looks like water has been added to ink so that you get a lighter wash and more ranges in value. If you'd like to use the same process for testing your brushes, I made a brush testing worksheet for you. There's a link in the description for the free download. When I think of drawing with ink, my mind goes straight to black and white. And by the way, I'll share a black and white version of this art later in the video. But right now, I'm not going to try to replicate the look of a traditional ink drawing. I just want to see if and how this brush can bring an inky feel to the kind of art I typically create. So first I did a quick pencil sketch, and now I'm just figuring out how best to use this brush to add color. This really does have the scratchy look of an old brush. So now that I'm actually trying to create specific shapes, I'm realizing that it doesn't always do what you want it to do. With a brush like this, there's really no point in trying to achieve a refined, detailed look. So you just kind of have to embrace the rough quality and use it to your advantage as much as possible. So I'm just going to lean in and go for an unrefined style. I don't know if rustic is quite the right description, but it feels kind of vintage and rough cut. For the bottle, I just inked the outline and then added blocks of color to create the suggestion of a few shadows and highlights. I inked solid shapes for the leaves and flowers, but to continue with the rustic look, I was really loose with it, and I didn't worry too much about creating a super clean fill. I then layered a lighter color on top of the green and went back in with a third layer of color, so it kind of looked like a surface that's been painted and repainted several times. Here you can really see the splotchy, inky look on these lines that I added to the leaves. This brush worked really well for inking the lavender. I just used really short, quick strokes and a few different shades of purple. I took the same approach with the pink flowers as well, just a few simple strokes for the petals, then a darker color for contrast. For these scattered yellow petals, I basically just added a few blobs of color. It really would have been counterproductive to try to define such small shapes with this brush. Ordinarily, I would never use a brush like this for lettering because it's way too difficult to control for small details. But I'm going all in with this piece, so let's see if I can make this work. I'm just going to keep the lettering style really simple. And since I've already got this kind of vintage vibe going on, it doesn't feel too out of place for the lettering on the label to be rough and kind of incomplete. I threw in a little flourish for funsies. And lastly, I added a darker green in the background, and that additional contrast really helped all the other colors to pop a bit more. And here's how it turned out. Okay, final thoughts on this brush. I think it works well if you want a very stylized look. I wouldn't recommend it as a go-to inking brush if you want clean, polished artwork, but for a rougher aesthetic like this, it worked pretty well. When used on a solid, full-color drawing like this, it really doesn't look like a pen and ink drawing though. Now, when I recolored it in black, it gave more of that pen and ink feel. Here I also used the smudge tool to soften the shadows in the background and make it look more like an ink wash. And I think that worked fairly well. Of course, using a textured paper background also helped to make it look a little more authentic. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this brush. Do you think you'd give it a try? Let me know in the comments. If you'd like to see more from this brush review series, there's a link to the playlist in the description. And if you enjoyed this video, remember to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.